Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell Rabin, and I'm very glad you're joining us again today. Today, we're going to be having a really interesting show. We have two wonderful guests on to speak with us. The first half hour will be with Gay Hendricks from the West Coast. He's calling into the studio. And in studio is Muriel Gold, who is an artist and has put together a really interesting DVD called Drawn Home. And we'll get to that later. Gay Hendricks, a beautiful man that I've had a chance to get to know over the last year or two, is a prolific author, psychologist, leader in so many ways, filmmaker, entrepreneur. He has been in the field of psychology and writing for over 30 years, has been a professor for 21 years at University of Colorado. He is the founder with his wife Caitlin of the Hendricks Institute, an internationally known institute focusing on relationships and coaching and creating healthy, happy, sustainable relationships, an important word these days. Gay and his wife have been guests on Oprah's show. Now he is on A Better World with Mitchell Rabin. A number of times, and that has brought him even greater celebrity over the course of the past several years, keeping him extremely busy, just fielding some of the activity that has occurred from his being with Oprah. And now, today, I should just mention a couple of his books that he is quite well known for, among which are The Corporate Mystic. He's a New York Times bestseller with his prior book, 5 Wishes, which we did a TV show about in his studio. And he's written numerous other books that have become very well known and very greatly loved. Today's focus is going to be on his latest book called The Big Leap. Conquer your hidden fear and take life to the next level. Wow, and I feel like I've been doing it simply by reading it. Gay, are you there?
I am. Great to be with you again, Mitchell.
I'm so glad to have you, my friend. It's really wonderful. I know where you're sitting. It's such a beautiful setting.
Yes, you've been here in my home, and we're very happy to have you here, and always welcome here, Mitchell.
Well, thank you so much, Gay, and I'm sure I'll be back, and we'll continue the fun that we've been having. I've been just enjoying you even out here in New York via your words in The Big Leap. What a pleasure. What a pleasure. You are guiding people yet again to another level of success. It's sort of like, is there a limit?
Well, I don't think so. I think that, in fact, the Big Leap is really about two big ideas. And one of them is that most of us walk around in the grip of an upper limit problem where every time we make a breakthrough to more success, we find a way to sabotage ourselves. And so the book is partly about how to get out from under that upper limit problem so that you don't have any limits. The second thing it's really about is how to establish yourself in your zone of genius, where you're really functioning at your highest capacity. And so it's, I've worked with 12-year-old piano prodigies, and I've worked with CEOs and rock stars and that kind of thing, and all of them have the same issue that all the rest of us do, which is that we get this thermostat setting set low early in our life before we can think for ourselves. And so later on, when we exceed that thermostat setting, we tend to mess up in some way to bring ourselves back down.
Yes, exactly. It's a self-sabotage program, would you say?
I would definitely say so, and you can hardly pick up the newspaper or turn on the television set without seeing a great blazing example of it almost every week. Like this week, there's the kind of the melt the governor of
South Carolina,
where he said he was going off on the Appalachian Trail, but he was really visiting his girlfriend in Argentina. And so, it's kind of like, and Elliot Spitzer, of course, back there. You get to the top of the career where you've got everything, but if you don't feel like you deserve it, you'll find some way to mess it up.
Yes, exactly. It's like an undertow, Gay. When you go out, and take a risk out in the ocean, there's something that pulls you back to shore.
Oh, that's a really great example. I've never thought of that metaphor before, but that's actually quite brilliant. I'm going to just madly scribble this
Please
down.
do. Please do. Use it to your heart's content. Sure. But it's interesting because in a sense, it's a matter of physics, you know? And
I very much agree. It's you know, it sort of looks like a moral thing, but it's really a matter of physics.
Yeah. But yet, in your book, you do offer some real methods to go. Oh, I see where we're going. We're going beyond physics. We're entering the quantum world. But no, it's kind of interesting because there is that space, sort of like in Tai Chi Chuan or, you know, the soft martial arts, where a force in one direction is not reciprocated with the same Newtonian force back.
Yeah, it's a whole different kind of physics. I appreciate you bringing that out to the light here, because not everybody really understands that. You know,
Yes.
that it's a matter of actually learning how to stabilize yourself at higher and higher levels of positive energy.
Yes.
And as you begin to do things in your life that are transformational, like speak honestly and develop positive goals and begin to make contributions to other people and to the world, what's going to happen is your vibrational level increases, and that's when the upper limit problem gets pushed up to the surface, because the whole purpose, in a way, of living a life dedicated to transformation is to bring to the surface all of those old hindrances and limitations from the past so that you can move on through them and live in a world without limitation.
Yes, exactly. And you have worked with some great folks you made general reference to, but Kenny Loggins, for instance, and his partner Loggins and Messina, you know, and could you give us a story or two about some of the work you've done in this domain?
Sure.
It's
well,
really interesting.
Yes, thank you. Well, I've always loved music and movies, and have been involved in the movie business and the music business off and on for years.
Yes.
And so as a result of that, quite a number of well-known musicians and actors and folks like that have come to us for relationship counseling or big leap counseling, really, about how to
Yes.
take their life to a whole different level. Kenny is a very dear friend of long standing, and he was able to really reinvent his life. He got to the end of where he thought he couldn't go any further as a duo with Loggins and Messina, because he wanted to explore solo things, and he wanted to write a kind of music that they weren't able to write together. And so, you know, it's very difficult to dismantle a musical act. It's, you know, like dismantling a family. You know, there's a lot of
Yes.
stresses and strains. But
He
was able
and
to
bonds.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
a lot of times, like with the musical group, like with Loggins and Messina, they've known each other since they were kids, basically. You know, Kenny was 16, I think, when he wrote his first hit song.
Oh,
and
God.
So, you know, while the rest of us were walking around the school parking lot, he was at home strumming on his guitar.
Right.
And so, but the key thing about Kenny is that he is incredibly open to reinventing himself. And so, you know, now he's sung now to 3 generations of people, really, because he had hit songs in the 70s, he had hit songs in the 80s, he had hits in the 90s, and now he's still going strong here almost 40 years later after he first began. And so the way he's able to do that is by seeing everything as a potential upper limit problem and being on the lookout for that, so that he doesn't keep sabotaging himself or push himself back down. So that's how he can continue to be creative and incredibly prolific,
Yes.
you know, right up into his 60s and presumably even later in life.
Yes. Isn't it interesting? So you interceded in a way to help him deal with the undertow, with the upper limit, and showed him how, I mean, of course, you go into this in the book, the different ways in which he would self-sabotage on a daily basis, relationships, money, accidents, illness, etc. I guess it's important for people to realize that these daily, one of the chapters I really enjoy in the book, has to do with how this shows up, not necessarily in the larger, broader strokes of our lives, but in the moment to moment, even the conversations that we have with ourselves about ourselves.
You know, it's absolutely right. And Bonnie Raitt is another brilliant musician that would be another great example from that part of life, because Bonnie's big upper limit back during the 60s and 70s and and into the 80s a little bit, was in the realm of addictions, that she had some addictions going that she's talked about publicly and that kind of thing, so I'm not telling any tales out of school here.
Sure.
But she really figured out, like a lot of people who struggle with those figure out, that it's really a classic upper limit problem. It's just another way we use to bring ourselves back down.
Yes.
And once she kind of had that realization, she realized, wait a minute, I don't want to have limits. And so she began picturing and feeling a new kind of music that she wanted to create. She got famous as a blues musician primarily back in the 60s and 70s, and yet that genre felt like it was kind of enclosing her, and she wanted to get out of that. And she still loves the blues, but she was hearing all of this new kind of deep pop music that's about relationships and things like that. And so when
rock
she was
music.
able to, exactly. And when she was able to transcend that old upper limit, here comes this album through her Nick of Time, and ended up winning, I think 8 or 9 Grammys, and it was immediate confirmation that she had made the right move to move into her zone of genius. Yes. And that's so incredibly important, not just with a musician or an actor or anyone, is to look for what your zone of genius is in yourself. What are the things that you're uniquely suited to do? What are the things that you most love to do? Because those will give you the very cues to what you can organize your life around. And I always say you don't really have to, you don't have to blow up your life and move to Tahiti and or to Tibet and live in a cave or anything like that. Stay right where you are, but do a minute or 2 or 10 minutes more of what you most love to do every day, and it becomes contagious.
Yes, exactly. Like Joseph Campbell so beautifully put it, Gay, inviting us, engaging us to follow our bliss. Yeah,
exactly. And to really, as a very, like I wish somebody had told me in the 12th grade or the 7th grade or the 1st grade that life is about discovering what you most love to do and how to bring that out into the world. Yes. I was probably 30 years old before I even ran across that concept. And there it was in a lecture by the Indian philosopher Krishnamurti. I went to a lecture of his, and he said this electrifying thing. He said, the whole purpose of education is to help you discover what, with all your heart, you most love to do.
Wow. So exactly.
If somebody had told me that was the purpose of education, I would have paid a little more attention.
Exactly. And if we look at the root of the word from the Latin educare, it literally means to lead out, which means that what it is we want is already embedded inside, and a teacher is one who leads it out of us.
And that is so important.
Or to be really literal, conducts it out of us.
Conducted, drawn out of
right?
it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that
to stay true to the Latin, that is.
Whatever wherever your listeners are and whatever they're doing and whoever
across
they are,
the country.
I can promise them. I promise that there is a genius, a zone of genius inside yourself.
Yes.
And you begin to open up to that genius and bring it out into the world, and it develops a life of its own where you suddenly want to spend more and more and more time doing that. When I first came up with this idea, I made my assignment to myself to get to where I was spending at least 50% of my time in my zone of genius. And then once I accomplished that, I said, okay, I'm going to go further and go to 70% of my time. And so I began to just choose more activities and say no to things that weren't in my zone of genius. And now, many years later, even though I work a lot, I haven't actually felt like I've worked in 20 years, because it's what I love to do. So I'm doing what I love to do right now. It's not work.
Exactly. In my own life, I do a fair amount of traveling, as you know, Gay, and I've been out on the West Coast a number of times over the past just a few years. And people ask me, are you going for business or pleasure? And I say, well, then I would have to understand the difference between them. I said, well, my business is a pleasure, so I guess I'm going for pleasure. But there will be some business that's done. So.
I know. Well, it's amazing. By the time you're 75 years old, you've spent 25 years sleeping, 25 years working,
right,
and you've even spent 2 years dreaming by the time you get to 75.
My God.
And so, if you're going to spend a third of your life basically doing something, put a priority on doing something you love.
God
because
bless.
I'll tell you, I can't even remember what it feels like to get up in the morning and go to a job that I didn't like. I remember vaguely having to do that, but boy, I'll tell you, I don't want to ever go back there again.
Nor do you want to go back to lemonade stands or selling eggs.
Yes, Mitchell's referring to a part of the book where I tell some of the anecdotes about my early adventures in entrepreneuring, one of which was selling eggs door to door when I was a kid, and my career ended one day when I stumbled with a bag of a dozen eggs, and I crushed them.
You crushed the profits.
I crushed the profits for the week on Mrs. Geiger's doorstep trying to deliver her eggs to her. I remember crying all the way home,
God.
even though I was probably 10 years old.
Oh, that was precious. I loved it. I was just laughing on the subway up here about That's great. Not to mention Mr. Lewin and your adventures in Yiddishkeit.
Oh, man, that was such a great blessing to have Mr. Lewin as my next-door neighbor, because I got to learn all these words from him, words I could call my fellow Floridians at the time.
Exactly.
I would call them a ganef, or a schlemiel.
Oh, you better be careful with those. Those are charged words, my friend.
Oh, is that right?
But listen, I wanted to ask you, could you outline the basic ideas? You speak about 4 zones, and could you outline for our audience what those are so they can get some sense of the larger picture?
Yes. If you look at what you do during the course of the day or course of the week, you'll notice that your activities fit into 4 different zones. One is sometimes you're doing things you're not very good at, and I call that the zone of incompetence, where you're doing things that somebody else could do better than you can.
Yeah.
And many of us persist in doing those kind of things over and over again, partly because we're addicted to suffering. So we kind of do things we're not good at all the time so we can keep that suffering addiction going.
Yes.
But as quickly as possible, you need to move out of that and get to where you're spending your time in either your zone of competence, excellence, or genius. Now, your zone of competence is where you're doing things that you're good at and you can do, but somebody else could do them just as well. For example, standing in line at the post office, for me, would be something in my zone of competence. I could certainly do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm competent to do it, but somebody else could do it just as well.
Yes. Yes.
And the third zone, the zone of excellence, it sounds good, and it is good to a certain extent, but it can also be a trap. Mm-hmm. Because if you're in your zone of excellence, you're doing things that you're better at than most people. You make money at them. You're successful doing them. But where it becomes a trap is because oftentimes as you get further along in life, and certainly you get up around midlife, 40 years old or so, you start feeling kind of hemmed in by your zone of excellence. There's something in you want to express. There's a poet inside the stockbroker, or
yes,
a violinist inside the movie producer, or something that wants to come out that's been stifled. So what you have to do is start listening for what your genius is and discovering what your genius is, and then doing more of that on a regular basis. Start by just amping up your genius activities by 5 or 10 minutes a day. If you really love something, just do it a few more minutes a day. You don't have to blow up your whole life and run off and do that exclusively. Because what happens in a work situation, particularly if you begin to do more and more of your genius, is it becomes contagious, and people offer you more things to do in that area, and pretty soon you've kind of transformed an old job into a genius job.
Yes.
By just introducing more of your genius to
it. Yes, exactly. I know these words are so well spoken, Gay, and I so appreciate it, because this is a trajectory. It's really I see it as an evolutionary spiral, and if we are designed for that spiral, and if people start to kind of, stop the world, I want to get off, idea, then they're missing out on what our soul is really beckoning us toward. And there's pain. There's a price to pay for that. That's
well,
the other.
Yes,
that's
you
the
have
other
to be
side
able
of it.
To, you need to be open to whatever emotions come up as you soar higher and higher. What happens oftentimes as people soar higher on that genius spiral, up will come some fear.
Yes.
You know, because you're just like a bird must feel if it's soaring higher and higher into the thinner air. Suddenly there becomes a point where it wonders, wow, is there any support here? You know?
Yes.
And
where's gravity?
Yeah, where's gravity? And
yeah.
so, and we're all made like that in a way that as we go further and further in life, it's normal to expect some fears to come up. Up will come common fears like the fear of abandonment or the fear of being alone or the fear of just not being able to handle all of that energy of your creativity.
Exactly.
And so what happens when we get scared oftentimes is we kind of hold our breath and clench up and begin to take that fear seriously instead of just breathing on through it and going ahead and soaring even higher.
You're, of course, implying the great quote from Fritz Perls that you quote in the book, which is brilliant. Maybe you'll share it with us.
Yes, he said, fear is excitement without the breath. And I remember the first time I heard that, 40 years ago, I remember my eyes crossed. I said, what on earth is he referring to? And then I realized, the physical mechanisms of fear are exactly the same as the mechanisms of excitement if you remember to breathe. But if you hold your breath, suddenly you get more and more scared.
Yes.
And so he was saying that all it takes is 3 or 4 deep, easy breaths to begin to transform fear into excitement. And anybody can check that out, by the way. Just do an experiment next time you're feeling some anxiety about whatever it is, just walking down the street or whatever it is. Take 3 or 4 deep, easy, slow breaths, and you can actually feel the sensations of fear turn into the sensations of excitement or just a kind of a general aliveness feeling. It's quite remarkable to try that out.
Yes, exactly. He's brilliant, and he's bringing together the psychological with the neurophysiological, basically, and the way they interface,
And to this day, actually, the one piece of advice I give to people more than anything else when they're going through one of those little upper limits where they're suddenly starting to worry or they're suddenly starting to kind of seize up is just take 3 or 4 easy, deep breaths, because within 3 breaths, if you breathe correctly, you can actually begin to turn off your body's stress chemistry.
Yes.
And so a lot of people don't realize they have that much power over their emotions.
Right. That's a very key point, in fact, relative to the question that I want to ask is, you're a psychologist. You've been working with people for 30 plus years. What in those cases where there's actually been early trauma, not just neurosis, but, trauma, where people have embedded deeply in their subconscious fears of abandonment you referenced before, or rejection, or low self-esteem. I guess I would say I wonder if a few deep breaths would really handle that. What do you do with that?
No, I don't think 3 deep breaths would handle. What I'm saying is that you need to take a kind of a whole life openness to having things emerge, and that the 3 deep breaths idea is just a way to kind of get through tight situations. But in a way, you need to take this stance of openness not only to your own emotions and traumas, but also to people around you. Mm-hmm. Like I had a couple in here a while back, and they were, how old would you have to be? She was born, the wife of the couple was born in a concentration camp right at the end of World War II. So she was born around 1945 or so, just as this camp got liberated.
Yes.
And so that's a fairly traumatic beginning for anyone. I think everybody would agree, right?
Yes.
That's certainly worse than I had it when I was born. And so she was carrying around this trauma for not only 60 years of herself, but also, imagine growing up with parents who had given birth to their first child, in that kind of a setting.
Exactly.
So there's all this emotion all of the time, no matter what family you come from. We're all in the same boat in a way. It's that we need to be open not only to our own issues, feelings, and traumas, but we need to be sensitive to that in other people, because as we all move toward our zone of genius, we're going to be shedding lots of things that have held us back in the past. And first, to shed them, oftentimes you need to bring them up into the light.
Yes, exactly. So ultimately, we have to, in a sense, stare down our fear, no matter how deeply embedded it is, and in a sense, stand open to the openness and refreshingness, if you will, potentially, of life.
Yes, that's it. We need to open our hearts to ourselves. We need to look with compassion and insight into where we've been in the past, but not let that limit where we want to go in the present and future.
Yes. Oh, beautifully put. Really great. I would say, just in our closing moments here, the piece of the book that is in the appendix, I was wondering if you were hitting your upper limit, because I think that is so juicy and so vital, your stories as a young and growing entrepreneur. It should have been the introduction.
Oh, well, that's an interesting idea. I never thought of that. Well, thank you. That's a very thoughtful critique. I actually never thought of that before until this minute. So thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, because you go into telling stories. For instance, one of your clients was one of the founders of eBay. You tell that wonderful story, Maynard, I believe the name, and. Yeah. Here you have also done much in business, and it's a heartthrob, and you so beautifully recognize business as a spiritual discipline and path in itself. And, you're very much on the page, so to speak, and you speak loudly and beautifully and powerfully from that place, and anyway, just a thought.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm glad you appreciated the stories. Well, thanks again, Mitchell. It's great talking to you, and thanks for the good work you're doing out in the world.
Thank you so much, my friend. And be well. We'll be in touch.
All right. Blessings to you.
Thank you. That was Gay Hendricks, a wonderful and beautiful man who is the author of his latest work of many, many books called The Big Leap. And definitely it's a read worth your time and energy. I really, really enjoyed it. So, this is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. I'm very glad you're joining us. And please join our newsletter at www.abetterworld.net. We love to have you part of it. Get in touch with us at 212-420-0800 for any further information about what we're doing as A Better World. And clearly we are building a community, my friends, of people who are doing what they can to contribute to the larger good, to the larger life, if you will, of human beings, sentient beings on this planet. And it is in that light also that I want to introduce to you our next guest, a lovely woman just arrived from England named Muriel Gold, who is an artist. She's got, a series of interesting credentials as an artist, having studied extensively in England, in Germany, and elsewhere. But the nature of our conversation actually is going to really have nothing to do with credentials. It's going to have to do with really human life itself in its beautiful expression, artistic expression. So I want to just welcome you to the show. Muriel, glad to have you from England. Just grab that, the microphone will come to you. Either way.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I want to say in opening that I saw your beautiful DVD of yourself with a model, and you're in a sense contacting and relating to first a blank canvas of a page and allowing yourself to enter that kinesthetic experience, enter yourself, and then begin to absorb, if you will, the energy of a slowly moving model. Could you speak a little bit about what process goes on for you as an artist?
Yes, I think I came to this, you could call it a way of working or a way of playing, actually.
I like that better anyway.
Exactly, ultimately a way of living. and it came up through a series. It was halfway through my life when clearly the way I was living wasn't really working. And
as an artist, or
in every
as
way,
a
as an artist, it was working fine at a level of, yes, she can paint well and she's got interesting stuff and she can sell stuff, but in myself, something was lacking. So I got kind of bored, perhaps the wrong quite word, but it was like I had an itch that wouldn't go away, and it kept coming back. It was like a feeling like a lack. I didn't know what it was. So when this had happened often enough, I suppose a seeing here took place, and I thought, Muriel, why don't you just stop? Just stop everything. Just stop. And over time, in that stop, which wasn't just once for several minutes, it was a kind of stop that happened in the space of the perception of my living. And
are you saying that you entered stillness, perhaps?
Or you could call it a stillness, exactly. Exactly. And from that stillness, which is actually what I call home, I've come to call it home, I began to... it was as if I had a fever. It was as if I had an agitation, completely unaware, unconscious agitation that had to be right and had to do it well and had to follow the prescription and had to try and be a good girl as well as she could. And it just wasn't... It worked well enough on the outside, but there was something in here that wasn't comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So in this, what you rightly called stillness, I found I was yearning for something, and it began to have a form in a nebulous kind of way, that I was looking for something which would complete me, you could say. And
so, in other words, your work or play as an artist up to that point was really not satisfying that. Many people turn to the arts in general as a means of self-expression to complete, exactly.
Absolutely. But
to fulfill that yearning.
Absolutely, but very interestingly, the way that we do things goes on shooting us in the foot because we approach our art that way. So we start doing something. We start trying to make it work. We try to start to express ourselves.
I see
and
where
we
you're going.
There's an agenda in what we do. Mm-hmm. That, to me, is the cross on which not working hangs.
Mm-hmm.
So... And it was well in me. You know, I actually, in the beginning of my life, I remember my father, darling man, and he said it with all the love in the world, said, "Oh, darling, if only you were a boy, you could do anything you wanted." And clearly, without translating it in words, I thought, I'll bloody show you, I can do just as well as any boy. And I went into high competitive sport. I was very successful, and it didn't hit the spot. So then I got married and I had children, and I was a painter, and none of it made me bow in my heart. Yes, this was what I was born for. This is what's worth getting up for. And
well, you were playing a role of being someone else. You were seeking to fulfill your father's wish to have a boy.
So I was trying to live. I mean, a lot of us still and go through much of our lives.
Yes.
So
you really did come home. One of the things you came home to is really even your own womanhood.
Absolutely.
Is that a fair thing to say?
Absolutely, but by very slow degrees. I didn't know this was happening all the time. I'm now speaking with hindsight.
Surely.
And I found that I and everybody else was being defined by what we do. And I thought, hang on, there must be more to me and everybody else than that.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to think that, there must be another way of living. And I found, yes, there is another way of living. And it was because I stopped. And I breathed, not necessarily literally, but it was as if the being of me thought, why don't you just shut up for a bit in your whole life?
Mm-hmm.
Or rather, I wouldn't even say I did that. Life did it to me. Two marriages had fallen apart. I was itchy. I was anxious. I didn't know how to do it. So it was like I was an ocean, joined the crowd. I was like I was a lake which had all been shaken up by the wind, or the salt in a jar of water and salt, all shaken up. So I thought, just calm down. And do nothing for a while. And it happened to me. I didn't activate it. In this space of confusion, I met my teacher in this arena. I'd always been with teachers, but none of them have quite got me in the heart.
Yes.
Anyway, a man called Cecil Collins, and he changed my attitude to art. And the change was that I do life drawing, a very traditional thing in the arts, has been throughout the ages. It's naked models, usually. It doesn't matter whether they are to me or not, but they are normally. And
especially beautiful.
And very beautiful, and very touching and full of pathos of humanity, which already one has if we see it, and this is a big thing. I'll tell you a story, remind me in a minute if I forget to go on with it, of letting the models talk to me. And off the models that I drew, I began letting my life talk to me, the situations of my life talk to me. So I didn't jump in and know what I knew, and know my reactions, know how I'd behave, know my opinions. So all that sort of slowly calmed down and became quieter. And the story was when I went to an exhibition.
So you created a space essentially inside yourself, is what I'm hearing you say, Muriel, of inner quiet and a listening and, if anything, an unknowing.
Absolutely. Key word, unknowing. To me, that is an absolute cross. And to me, it is the change. To me, it's the big leap. We just heard this
exactly. That was the big leap,
yeah,
sure.
That, for me, has been the big leap.
And interestingly, also, if I may just use your own words, you said that was the big cross, not working. That's a double entendre, if you think about it, because not working, and it wasn't working.
It wasn't
and
working.
Not working.
Yeah.
In other words, enter a space of being, of listening, of unknowing, and therefore allowing.
Exactly. And beautifully, at the beginning of this little bit, you said you created a space for yourself. Actually, really seriously, truthfully, life created a space. Life which I eventually came to realize is the life of me. It itself is the life of all the manifest world. And it does everything. And we maybe don't do it. We maybe have to be a success, a glamour, a rich, a famous, or whatever. But to me, it's always life, subtly saying to itself, in the apparent character, seeking for something for the character, saying, "Hi, darling, I'm always here. Why don't you just come down, lie down in me, and I am yourself." And this slowly happened. So I realized that I didn't start my own workshops, literally. And I was sharing with a friend, actually, and she said, "God, couldn't you do for me what he's doing for you?" And we laughed, and I said, "Of course I couldn't possibly do that. I'm not a great artist, and I'm definitely not a teacher." And I told my teachers, he said, "Absolutely you can. Start with her." And I did 25 years ago, and they've just grown and grown and grown. And I've been my very best student, because I, so to speak, listened to life, teaching me through what I was doing how to live a different kind of life, which I would say isn't even my personal life now. I wake up in the morning now, and I just lie there and I say, "Okay, so what's on the cards for us today?" To myself and my life, which of course is the same thing.
Yes.
And it leads me, and I'm here in America, in this beautiful, mysterious, wonderful, sacred city, by being drawn to it by this. I didn't make a single move to do this.
No, I so appreciate your use of language, the phrase that, in fact, we want to publicly thank Michel Chevalier
Absolutely.
for being the instigator, the catalyst.
Yeah, apparently.
And,
I call it the life, if you like, the sacred, the Lord, as a coined phrase in drag. As a somebody, in this case it was as Michel Chevalier, who walked up a path which I happened to be walking down, and we met.
Is that so?
And that was it. And it unfolded from there, as if we were doing anything. Not at all. life was just dancing.
See,
it's beautiful secret
Michel
life.
Chevalier is chivalrous.
Absolutely.
That's the way it
yes,
is. But we do want to thank him for
We do
bringing
indeed.
you
I bow
here.
totally
So-
to Michel Chevalier for walking up that path
And,
and helping me, opening this here
yeah,
for me and others. It's a gift.
exactly. But I was saying that your sensitivity to language, I have greatly appreciated from the first moment Michelle mentioned you at one of our lateral satsangs that's facilitated by Kurt Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And he mentioned Drawn Home and you as an artist. I feel there's just a preciousness in that imagery.
Well, interesting enough, the word to draw in English is a beautiful double
Yeah, that's the
entente
point,
because,
yeah.
you were drawing actually in
Exactly.
the conventional, so-called drawing in the conventional sense.
Yeah.
And it ultimately is drawing us home into who we already are.
Yeah.
So we come to see, as I think it was T.S. Eliot said in the Four Quartets, we come to the place where we first started.
Yeah.
Nothing, as a newborn, and we know it for the first time. That is the stillness that is the big leap.
Yes.
And
exactly.
then you are lived, and the character, then the mind and the conditioned aspect can begin to cooperate with this heart bowing to a mystery in everything, in each other. And we all talk about a peaceful world and a better world, and we all want to do that, but how do we do that? And I don't think we do it from the conditioned character. We have to come back to this mystery, and by grace are yielded to it.
If we allow ourselves,
Yes,
to come to that state of graceful quiet,
absolutely.
wherein we are spoken to,
But it
and
isn't.
we receive in whatever way we do
Which
from
really-
whatever source it may be. Also things that are not our usual yardsticks of success, of money, and relationship. All of these are beautiful expressions of an inner peace and an inner joy of being.
Very interesting you should say that, because this thing of people expressing through the arts, actually, if we live this piece, it is expressed. We don't have to express. I don't personally have anything to express except my conditioned aspect, which was pretty up and down and showy off and based in, I want to be loved, all that psychological stuff we have to go through.
Right.
But it's a bit like the sun, the sun is just the sun. It just shines. It doesn't have to do a damn thing. It can't help shining. But the clouds that come in front of it can block it. And we are the same in the heart. The heart of silence shines as long as our conditioned aspect is seen as a player in the field, if you like.
Right.
In the Shakespearean sense of the word. I luckily enough,
Exactly.
by grace, went with Alan yesterday, and there, in the middle of us walking across the park, was Theatre in the Park playing Twelfth Night. And we went, and I thought, this is just like we are, players in the field, including thought, including the emotion. The whole inner realm are also part of the players in the field of this empty mystery of being. Virgin, you could say. I mean, how beautiful is this? Right at the head of our culture. And yet, you look up in the dictionary, it's all about virgins and physical virgins and a lot of stuff about that. And right at the end, it says most sweetly, virginity is something, a virgin is something to which nothing has been added. And we come back to our true nature, which is always there, and what's added is a play, a show, and from there we can say, ho ho, this is the good bit, this is the difficult bit, this is the dark bit, and I call it the palette of the Lord in the emotional arena of, it's colour of course because it's a palette, but it's in the emotions, and it's all the play of a mystery. And I find that is that's where the big change comes. Mm-hmm. That you, as this living mystery, watch yourself at play, and you bow and you say, Amen, how lovely am I.
Yes.
And that I here is the eye of you, and your eye is the eye of me. In fact, there was a very lovely...
Not separate.
It's not separate. We met your Sufi friend on the way in. And it just reminds me now of a Sufi story where there's a sage in a cave in a forest somewhere, and somebody wants to meet him, and he goes and knocks at the door, and the sage says, "Who's there?" And he says, "It is I." And the sage says, "Go away, I'm not interested." And this goes on, and he comes month out. Who is that? Who is there? "It is I." "Go away, I'm not interested." And finally it opens in the guy, and one day he goes and taps more gently on the door, and the sage said, "So who is there?" And he says, "It is yourself." "Ah," he says, "come in." So it's that recognition of that one of all of us, which we love in all of us. It's impossible not to love that in everything once it's been recognized here.
Yeah.
It's just a place of recognition.
Exactly.
And that we can't talk about this in words. And you and I had a very darling meeting. Maybe this isn't perhaps what should go on a program. Anyway, my beloved lives in France, and I was on the phone to him, and I said, "Call me on the landline because this is an expensive call on a cell phone." So I hung up. Wait 1 second, the phone goes, and I say, "Hi, beloved, hi, darling." And on the end of the phone is Mitchell, who I'd never met. So now Mitchell to me
Who said, "Hello, darling."
So he is now the beloved, and truly he is the beloved, the same beloved that lives my life.
Yes.
And that it's like consciousness, if you like, or the beloved, let's call it that because it's so
Truly.
difficult to name it, comes to meet itself.
Yes.
Comes to say, "Oh."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you bow, and then you have a new life. You have a new life.
Those of us who recognize the oneness of being,
Yes.
of all sentient beings, can enjoy that recognition of self in other and other in self.
Okay, absolutely.
So the world becomes our beloved. Life itself
is the beloved.
Is the beloved, and living in us and through us, as I feel that you're saying, in the way that you relate to and speak of, right? As your work as an artist, which is metaphorically really one with your life.
It is,
I should
absolutely.
say, remove the why and live with our life.
Absolutely. And just to come back into that arena of drawing, because words are tricky, is another way, another reason I could say why I draw. I sometimes say, people say, "Well, so why do you draw? Why do you do anything?" And I say, I draw to touch the beloved in what I'm drawing. And that touch opens that empty, sacred, unlabelable, unknowing, spacious willingness to be met. And it's palpable. I draw a lot with my hands on the paper, and the quietness that goes between your hand and the paper is palpably quiet.
Yes.
So the word quiet really is very key to me.
Exactly.
Because it's got a taste, it's got a palpability, and it's not really an experience. It's prior to that.
That's interesting. I could do something with that. But I would say that something I'm being reminded of here in our discussion, Muriel, of the beloved is an experience I had, in fact, as recently as this morning, of being in love with a very beautiful woman who, due to the dance occurring between us, the veritable alchemy, if you will, of dancing hearts and bodies.
Exactly.
Relating to each other on a profound level, she said to me, "The only way to express the way I'm feeling is not in words, but where's the canvas?"
Oh.
I need a canvas. And that just moved through me. And I went, we live with words and inside language and imagery both. What we refer to as thoughts and feelings are composed of the grammar, the syntax, if you will, of language is imagery.
Absolutely. And actually...
and we're therefore drawn to express through image.
Yes, and in a way, just to go, I hope I haven't, I'm not altering this that you've just beautifully told me, but actually you were on her canvas.
There you go. Right.
And actually,
life as art.
I often say in my class to come back to the state of lovers, because I see people quietening down and I see them with their hands on the paper responding to, say, you as a model in a pose full of pathos, if you like, touching the paper. And I say to them, just when we love each other, do we touch as tenderly as this? And drawing to me is actually like making love. It is exactly the same activity as ultimately is every gesture I make.
Beautiful. I get it. I get it. It's life as art.
Yes.
And when we're present with ourselves, when they're rooted in now,
yes,
without fear of future, concern and anxiety about the past and what should have happened.
Exactly.
When we can really be rooted here and now, as our great teacher has said, Ram Dass and others, then we get to experience the truly sensual nature of being and life itself.
Well, the body is for learning and experiencing this mystery in form.
Totally.
Wherever they got hold of, this is disgusting, that's disgusting, blah,
exactly.
blah. It's such a pack of lies.
Can I go somewhere with you?
Yeah.
Because I listened to your DVD and the conversations that you conducted, and I got the sense as I was listening and watching you that you were born and raised in London or in England.
Yes.
I got the sense that you were, the first part of your life, exemplifying the kind of conditioning that we've all experienced to one degree or another.
Absolutely.
Which is not to be in your body, not to enjoy your body, certainly not to enjoy the sex of your body.
Absolutely.
In your case, now I've learned about your father wanting a boy, and not to enjoy the gender of your body, therefore your female parts, and all of this is better off being denied.
Exactly.
And so you found in art some tactile reality that was acceptable. But one of your breakthroughs in your growth personally was to come to a place of re-owning your body, re-owning your womanhood, re-owning the joy and pleasure of your flesh.
Well, I'm going to have to tell you a funny story.
Is that an accurate?
Absolutely right. As you can see, I'm not 25
I'm a
anymore.
Therapist and 26. I can't help but I analyze psychologically.
I'm going to tell you a funny story. You probably won't put your this on your website after this, but I'll tell it to you because this was not that 2-3 years ago. My husband had died, and my life in this area was over. He was lovely. We'd had a fine marriage, up and down like everybody. But
you're a beautiful woman. What are you talking about?
Well, I'm just saying. I've got a huge family, lots of children, lots of stepchildren, lots of grandchildren, lots of step-grandchildren. I got 50 in the immediate family before I buy Christmas presents before I start on my friends, and I had drawn home. Okay, maybe not time for the story. Okay, well, all right, cut it really short. A guy walked into my life and he said, I really fancy you. And I burst out laughing. And he said, God, you're the rudest woman I ever met. And I said, well, I just don't do it like that. I just don't do it like that. I fall in love and maybe I, tiptoe into sex, etc. And he looked at me and he said,
ways.
He said to me, well, so maybe you could do it differently. And Drawn Home went across my thing, which I'm always challenging people to do it differently. And I thought, oh my God, here we go. And I said, okay. And we went into a very brief, very wild, very playful love affair, and it completely snapped something out of my childhood, out of me.
God.
And was it a gift? Wow.
On that note, Sexual healing is
Exactly.
rampant. That's beautiful. Muriel Gold, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure.
I'm so
Beloved.
glad. Beloved. No, you don't have a website, but you are
I
going
do have
to
a
be.
website.
You do,
Yes,
which is
it's www.draughtonhome.co.uk.
beautiful, excellent, and you'll be giving us a talk tonight, a free talk
Yes.
at
One Spirit.
One Spirit
Yes.
Interfaith in the West 30s, 38th, I believe, between 8th and 9th, 8th and 9th, and you'll be giving a talk workshop in New Paltz.
Yes, this weekend.
This weekend.
As far as I know, there are still a couple of
And
places.
then Omega Institute you'll be teaching at. Go to the website for more information.
Exactly.
Thanks so much, Muriel.
Thank you indeed. Thank you with my heart.
This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thanks so much for joining us. Be in touch with us at www.abetterworld.net. Remember to go read The Big Leap and take it with Gay. All right. So glad you joined us, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.